Hi, welcome to the Center for Identity's January webcast, the second in our Control Your Identity series. I'm Katie Stevens, the Center's Education Program Manager, and today we are very glad to have Buffy Christie, the Senior Director of Global Security at Equifax, here with us. Buffy's going to discuss how identity fraud happens and how we can protect ourselves from it. Take it away, Buffy.
Thank you, Katie. Okay, so today we want to talk about what does identity fraud look like. We're going to talk a little bit about Equifax, who we are, what identity theft is, how thieves obtain your personal information, how your information is being used for fraud, and then how you can better protect yourself. So let's talk a little bit about me. My name is Buffy Christie. I'm the Senior Director at Equifax for Global Security. I do have a Certified Fraud Examiner certification. I've got a very diverse background. I've spent some time in the restaurant industry, retail, credit card, and now data with Equifax. In all of my roles, I've always been a protector of people and consumers and the businesses that I work for. Not going back.
It's determined not to stay on that slide.
It's not going to stay on that one slide.
There we go.
So let's talk a little bit about Equifax. So everyone knows that Equifax is one of the 3 credit reporting agencies. But Equifax is so much more than just credit reports. We're located in various countries around the globe, and we have lots of data on consumers. In addition to just the credit report, we provide analytics and data to help businesses make determinations and decisions for financial and identifying consumers and who they really are. So what is identity theft? Identity theft is the use of your information for other purposes that are not yours. So think about that. Think about what your identity is. Think about your information. Most people, when they think of identity theft, truly think of credit card theft or some type of loan. But let's think about other things that can be compromised or be used in identity theft. Anywhere your information is used today could be used for identity theft. So think about your cell phone service. Think about your cable TV or your utilities. Think about the time of the year right now. Think about your tax return. All of those areas are areas that can be compromised for identity theft. So how do thieves obtain your personal information? Do you know where your data goes? When you go to a medical appointment and you give your information out, do you know where that information goes? When you are online shopping and making a purchase or filling out a survey or providing your information to gather a mailing list, a shopping list, to possibly register for a sweepstakes, do you know where your information is going? All of these are methods and avenues as to which your data is now at risk, and thieves could obtain that information.
Can you advance the slide, Mike?
Can you advance the slide, Mike? So let's talk. Thank you, Mike. Let's talk about those. So unsecured websites. You as a consumer are out there shopping, and you go to an unsecured website and you input your information. You put your information on an unsecured site, it makes it vulnerable to thieves to obtain it. Your mail, everybody gets mail. You expect your mail to arrive, you expect bills to arrive on certain days of the month. You get mailers, you get marketing information. All of those pieces of mail that you obtain have some bit of information about you, whether it's your name or your address or possibly a financial account or statements or information on balances that you have, or money that you have, or assets. Social networking sites, huge opportunity there for your information to be made available. People love to talk about where they go, what they do on social networking sites. It never ceases to amaze me how many people are surprised when they go on vacation that their house is robbed. And I'm like, well, you know, if you post that you're going somewhere on a social site, you shouldn't be surprised that someone knew to show up at your house. It's being a very aware consumer. It's being very conscious of what you are saying about yourself and where you're placing your information. If you advertise, you did just that. You advertised where you were going, and being at home was not it. These ask for your information. Can't tell you how many times we talk to consumers that say, well, I got a call from somebody saying they were my credit card company and they needed my name and my social and my credit card. They had the front digits, but they just needed the 3 digits on the back to verify who I was. Well, if it was your credit card company, they should have that information already. And so often we talk to consumers that willingly give away their information because they are social engineered. Someone has called them blindly and starts asking questions. And through that, their consumers are giving their information that way. And then certainly it's very easy to buy information. Think about all of the data breaches that we've seen in the media over the past year. All of that information that is stolen and is available for purchase on underground sites and underground networks, and these thieves and the fraudsters that want significant financial gain know where to go and buy that information. It's very easy for them to go and buy data. And that data right there has information that allows these guys to commit the fraud. So how do thieves use your information once they have it? So, everybody, when you start talking about identity theft and you talk with victims or you talk with consumers that have not yet been a victim, they say, well, yes, if someone gets my information, they're probably going to open an account, a credit card, and, it's going to be painful, but I know what to do. You just call the company and you say, that's not me, and you go through that process. But what people often don't realize is once someone has your information and they know enough about you, not only can they create new accounts, but they can go and take over your existing accounts. So if you have an account where you have money saved or set aside, it's very simple for that thief to go and obtain that information. They can take control of existing accounts. Setting up new credit cards, certainly. And with instant credit and being able to apply and obtain credit online and make purchases immediately, that makes the thief very happy because they can obtain money very quickly. Setting up a cell phone or cable service is another way that we see consumers' identities being compromised or victimized. Get you a cell phone, walk into your local cell phone provider, use a compromised identity, obtain a cell phone. You can open more accounts with it. It's kind of this vicious circle that once somebody has your identity, they can do a lot of things and step through a process very quickly, and then have with significant financial gain and then walk away. And then we're working with the poor victim to recover, right? So it's this piece today, we really need to talk about the consumer education and how consumers can be more aware and more vigilant in protecting themselves. Thieves love to open loans. They have a good identity that has someone with a good credit score, and they say, hey, we can go and apply for lots of loans and obtain lots of money fast. And then, this time of the year, especially January, they love to file tax returns. At January and February, they'll take a consumer identity, file a tax return, and, very quickly get a payment back. And then you, the victim, when it's time for you to file your tax return, you find out that someone's already filed in your name. And boy, what a surprise that is, because they never get it right. So they've already taken the money, and then you, as the victim, are going through a process on how to recover that.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Are you seeing any shifts over the last few years in terms of which of these are becoming more prevalent? And would you be willing to make a prediction about which over the coming years we might see more and more of or less and less of?
Sure. I'll get my crystal ball out.
Okay.
So, over the past years, it's become, the whole identity theft piece has become more organized. Okay. I will tell you that we see, if we have one victim one individual and you can see a pattern there, we see that same pattern organized, right? So your thief is not typically targeting one individual and saying, hey, I really only need $50,000 or $100,000. But instead they're saying, hey, I'm successful with one, so I'm going to do 20 the same way. So we're seeing more organized patterns around identity theft. We're seeing a lot more in the tax return area. We talk with victims about that often. about how they can better protect themselves, and making sure that when they file as early as possible, and checking to make sure that their information has not been compromised. The future of this, I would love to see it go away, right? But that's not realistic. The thieves have found a great way to make money very quickly, and we have lots of victims. In order to reduce this or to mitigate it, we've got to get our consumers more aware. They need to understand that they've got to protect their information, and they've got to protect just more than just their credit information. So often our consumers believe, well, if I just protect my credit file, that's everything. But the reality is there's so much more that needs to be protected, right? Just the name, the address, their medical records, their cellular service, how they behave with a cell phone, how they behave with their laptops, and their just their information in general. Okay, so why do the thieves do this? Certainly it's money. It's the financial gain for money. It's there may be some underlying a target of certain areas or certain people because that's what they want to do, but it's the financial piece. We see victims of all age ranges. We see children being victims of identity theft. Children shouldn't be credit worthy yet. They shouldn't really have a profile yet, but we see them being a victim of identity theft more and more because they are young and they're not credit active. So those are the ones that we really need to protect. As a consumer, we need to look not only at ourselves, but at our children and at our parents, right? Because it's a different perspective, right? So you and I are growing up in this age, and we understand data, and we understand the need to protect our information. Our parents grew up in a different time frame, and so educating our own parents is something I think that we need to do. I talk with my parents about protecting themselves often. Likewise, my children. We all have children, and our kids are of a different mindset. They love being on the internet. They love being connected all the time. They will tell anybody anything on the internet because they believe if they're friends on this social network site, then certainly they are friends forever and they can tell them anything. So it's educating our children, and even outside the digital piece, we need to protect our children and ourselves from a paper record.
With the recent Sony hack, where a lot of different kinds of information were leaked and people's reputations were damaged, do you think that that's something that people are going to become more aware of as our kids are putting private information about themselves online, as corporate emails are being put out there? Do you think that there'll be a growing concern about reputational damage along with the financial piece? And if so, how can people mitigate that kind of damage?
Sure. So I think with the recent Sony breach, I think that was an eye-opener for many consumers and probably for many corporations, right? Because so much information is out there, emails that people did not expect to be out there are now out there. There's reputational, concern from that perspective. So I think that makes everybody pause for a moment, or at least a lot of people pause for a moment and go, oh my, right? But if you don't keep something very visible with a consumer or with an industry, it kind of goes away, right? It gets in the back of your mind, and you think, well, that happened to them. That can never happen to me, right? So it's how do we educate? How do we teach? How do we educate? How do we tell people that if you put something in an email, it could be out there, right? Don't put your social security number in an email. Don't talk bad about a person in an email because it truly could be out there. And that's, I really see that as our biggest challenge is how do we educate and get people to understand, right? So in this industry, we're very aware of how we handle data. We're very aware of our surroundings and being conscious of decisions we make. And, people say I'm overly protective of my children and how I manage things because of this industry. I've been a victim of identity theft. Me, of all people, I've been a victim of identity theft. And it was shocking to me when it occurred. Fortunately, I have monitoring in place. So the very day it occurred, I knew about it and was able to call and stop all the downstream. right? And I knew what to do, but then I took a step back and looked at it and said, how did this occur, and what behaviors or what patterns do I need to change about myself and my life and how I handle things, so that this doesn't happen to me again. And it's sharing that story. It's kind of what we talked about some earlier today. It's when it happens to you, it becomes very real. But until it happens to you, you hear about it. And I think that our general consumer populations have heard about it so much, but they don't really have the full grasp on it. They don't have their minds around it. And so we need to make it real for people and get them to understand that this is it's not a one-stop shop, right? So to use an analogy, it's kind of like you have insurance for your car, right? And because you carry insurance on your car, it doesn't guarantee that you're never going to be in an accident or your car's never going to get stolen, but it's there for your protection. So if something does happen to your car, it's much like your identity, right? So you can have a monitoring service, and Equifax has a wonderful monitoring service that you can place on your credit reports and monitor your credit report for use and fraud and activity and things of that nature. And that's great, but it doesn't guarantee that you're never going to be a victim. So there's lots of other things as a consumer that you need to do to protect yourself. And so those are the things that I think we really need to focus on. It's the education and getting the understanding. Thanks. So in 2014, I was watching the news one day, and CNN did this report on identity theft. A new victim of identity theft occurs every 2 seconds. Every 2 seconds, there's a new victim of identity theft. So in this 1 hour session today, we're going to have 1,800 new identity theft victims, not just incidents of identity theft, but actual brand new victims in this hour. And you sit down and you think about that, and you put your mind around that, and it's just phenomenal of how much identity theft is out there and how it occurs. So let's talk about the things that you need to do to protect your information. And I sometimes laugh when I say this: carry only what you need in your wallet. Don't take your Social Security card with you. But so many people still today carry their Social Security card, which amazes me. But then I try to think about it. Well, that's the industry I'm in, so that's why I know that. I was I was shopping a few weeks ago, and I was coming to the car, and someone's wallet was laying on the ground. So I picked the wallet up and I opened it to see if identifiables were in there that I could find somebody. And so I found a driver's license on the right-hand side in the picture, and on the left-hand side was a Social Security card right there. And I was so shocked. And so I was able to find the consumer and called him and had him come back and meet me in the parking lot. And I gave him his wallet, and he was surprised that everything was still there. But, and I said, sir, why do you carry your Social Security card? Well, I might need it. I'm like, for what? So there's the people just want to have everything with them. They don't need their Social Security card. So, I gave my little spill with him about taking his Social Security home and leaving it there. But it's amazing how many people still carry their Social Security card. Right. Your mail. So your mail's going to come. You know what you should get in your mailbox. Watch for bills to arrive. If you are expecting a certain bill around a certain time of the month and that bill doesn't show up, then you may have had someone go through your mailbox. Somebody might have been curious as to what's in your mailbox. These are things you need to watch for. If you're missing a bill, then you may want to make a phone call to that company and inquire about that bill. Go ahead and pay it. Get some kind of an alert in place. It only takes one piece of mail with your information on it to start the process of having your identity used. If you're taking vacation and going to be gone for a long period of time, have someone you know and trust pick up your mail for you, or have the post office hold your mail for you. Don't let 2 weeks of mail sit in your mailbox on the off chance that you'll just pick it up in 2 weeks. That's a lot of information for someone to come by and pick up. All your mail that you get and all those lovely advertisements that you get and you receive, and before you put them in the trash, take a moment and shred them. A cross shredder is great. Just dispose of them in a way that they cannot be taken and misused. Securing your personal information. And Think about hard copies of information. Think about hard copies of information about your children. When you go and register your children at school, when you take your children to a doctor or a medical appointment, they always ask, hey, I need your child's social. Ask why. Why do you need my child's social? Is there some other piece of information that you can use to identify my child other than their social security number? If they're adamant about the social, then ask how they're going to protect the social. You know, where is this piece of paper going to go? Who's going to have access to this information? Can you, put the information you need for now and give it back to me? Just ask questions. As consumers, we do such a great job physically protecting ourselves and our children. We need to think that way about our identifiables. Right. And we need to ask those same questions about our identifiables for us and for our kids. Digitally protect your information. Don't respond to emails that pretend to be from your bank that could possibly be asking for information, or an account number or a social. Pick up the phone and call your bank. If you think you have something in an email, pick up the phone and call the bank. Don't share information that you don't need to share. It's just asking the questions. So, via the phone, via email, via web chat, if you're online and a chat box pops up on your computer asking for information about you, or starting a discussion trying to sell you something or initiate some kind of transaction, and this is not you initiated, this is probably not somebody you want to give your information to. The same with the telephone. If someone calls saying, hey, they need this information, your credit card, we think there's something wrong with your credit card. I always educate and advise people, if that's your credit card company saying they're calling you and they need information about you, then tell them you will call your credit card company back. And you go and you get that credit card that you have and you flip it over on the back and you use that phone number that's on your credit card and you call that number and find out what it is that they think they need. And you initiate the phone call with a trusted number. Don't take the number that someone gives you via the phone. Right. Call the number that you know and that you trust. And the same in email. Don't respond to emails that you don't initiate from someone you don't know. You've got to be aware of even emails from people you do know that have links in them that you don't know where that information is going. So let's talk about communication devices. Most people walk around with a phone or two phones with them at all times. People have tablets. They have, some device to communicate. We're a society that likes to be connected all the time. So how are we protecting ourselves with those devices? Are we password protecting those devices? When we lay our phone down, have a password on it. What if someone picks it up? Can they open it and see everything about you? We have so many apps and methods on our phones now that help us. They're great. I mean, they're wonderful to help us and find information and keep our information. But if we don't password protect those pieces of info, then we're no better off than writing it down and throwing the piece of paper on the ground, right? So you walk away from your computer, you walk away from your phone, you walk away from a device. Do you lock it when you walk away? Because if you don't, and you're leaving it open for someone to pick up and look at information, it only takes a moment for someone to look at your information, right? Think about it. Think about when you are in line at the ATM, or you're in line to get your cup of coffee in the morning, right? Everybody's on their phone, they're looking at information. The person behind you also has a phone, and all of our phones have cameras on it. It only takes a moment for someone to snap a picture. So, with our devices and with our information, we have to be aware of our surroundings, right? So as consumers, we've got to not only think about where we're putting our information, but we've got to think about where we are when we're using our information, right? So think about that. Look at your surroundings. My favorite thing to do on an airplane is with the person sitting next to me is on their phone or on their computer, and they're, typing away, or they're reading something or whatever, they're not aware of their surroundings. And I'll lean over and talk to somebody and say, hey, so how's this book that you're reading? And, and just kind of say, hey, you really need to be aware of your surroundings. You don't know who's looking over your shoulder or who's beside you. And just kind of heighten awareness in everything that we do. So what do you do if you are a victim? After you get over the initial shock of being a victim, so you really do. You really and truly need to file a police report. We talk to consumers a lot, and they're like, well, why do I need to file a police report? I didn't lose any money. I didn't lose any money. The bank lost some money, but they're going to say, it's going to go away. It's only a couple $100s. The police are not going to do anything. Why do I need to file a police report? Well, we need to file the police report. One, we need that record of the police report, right? So if you start a police report and then there's a pattern and other people in your same area, your same town or surroundings have those same behaviors, it's all the same credit card, it's all the same cell phone, right? It's all the same information, then it's easier for the investigators to group that together and say, okay, this is organized. This is not just you. There's a pattern here. There's someone we can go after. An identity theft affidavit. This is a document that is a statement for the consumer to make that, yes, I'm a victim of identity theft. This is who I really am, and this is what I know about what has happened, right? So it's only a credit card that I'm aware of, or it's all of this, or I lost my wallet and now all this has occurred. And this is the consumer's opportunity to give that statement, an affidavit that I am a victim. So those items, and then creating the identity theft report through the FTC. So the FTC has a great database where they're collecting all of this information, and you bring all these items together, and then you can take that information, you can share it with the creditors, you can share it with your the 3 credit reporting agencies, which you definitely want to do. You want to get that fraud alert on your credit report so that no new lines can be opened on your credit report at that moment forward without consumer interaction, without you, the consumer and the victim, being a part of that transaction. You want to notify your creditors, not only the ones that are new and there may not be yours, but you want to notify your other creditors too, to say, hey, look, I was a victim of identity theft. I don't think this card has been compromised, but if anything changes, somebody wants to change an address or a phone number or whatever, let's make you aware so that nothing can change. And then it's monitor your information, right? So we talk about, there's tons of credit monitoring tools out there. There's Equifax has a great one, monitors all 3 credit reports. We'll let you know of any activity on your credit report. You can set all sorts of thresholds and you can receive alerts and emails and texts as to what's going on, which these items are great. But beyond your credit report, you as a consumer, now that you've been a victim, you need to be even more vigilant on what you're monitoring about yourself, right? You need to monitor your cell phone and activity. You need to look out there to make sure no change of addresses occur. If your mail starts disappearing, make sure that no one's registered a change of address for your mail. Pay attention to those types of things. Pay attention to your insurance. Make sure that you're not seeing unusual medical bills. It's just the whole piece takes a whole different gamut once you are a victim of identity theft on how much more you need to watch about your information. You need to look at your credit report. You're entitled to your annual credit report free every year, and that varies via state in which you live. But you need to look at those items and make sure that everything is a true reflection of who you are, and that anything that's unusual or fraudulent is not there. So, as a consumer, we really cannot ever stop monitoring who we are, our identity, right? So we've talked about your credit report, we've talked about credit cards, we've talked about your cell phone service, we've talked about your medical. All of those pieces come together to make who we are. So those are the items we always have to stay ahead of monitoring. We can never stop. It goes back to the whole insurance piece, right? Even though we're monitoring our identity, it doesn't mean that there's not other items out there that we need to be aware of. And that we definitely need to be aware of those types of.
Okay, so it looks like we've entered the question part of the webcast. I am unfortunately, Mike, not able to view any questions that have come in. Can you tell me if there's anything there? What's that?
It doesn't look like a group chat.
Okay. Okay. Oh, okay.
So you may want to check the inbox.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. I have a couple of questions. Oh, wait, we are getting some questions here. Okay. So these are coming in through our social media channels. Does pulling a credit report, ideally 3 times a year, ping your credit? Apparently that's a common worry with consumers and people building credit.
Sure. So you are entitled to your free credit report every year. And so when the question around pinging your credit report is probably centered around, does that negatively impact your credit score? And the answer is no. Your annual credit report does not negatively impact your credit score. You as a consumer, we want you to look at your credit report, all 3 of them, every year. Make sure they're accurate so that you as a consumer are educated about what your credit profile looks like, so that when you are applying for credit or looking to buy that house or that car, that you know what your credit profile looks like and what your credit score is. And doing that once a year does not impact your credit score.
Okay. Excellent. Who should request a credit freeze? So that my understanding is that there's different levels of things that you can request. So can you kind of walk us through those and then let us know who should request each level of those?
Sure. So if you are a victim of identity theft, you may place a fraud block on your credit report or fraud alert to let the creditors know that you've been a victim of fraud, right? And so you do that. If you include with that fraud report a copy of your police report, we can put a 7-year extended alert on your credit file that lets creditors know for 7 years this person has been a victim of identity theft. Please make sure that you do these additional steps for verification.
Okay, so that's why the police report in particular is important.
Very important.
Okay.
Yes. There's also the ability as a consumer to freeze your credit file. So if you want to go and freeze your credit file, there are freeze websites out there that are set up for each one of the credit reporting agencies, and you go to the freeze website and you place a freeze on your credit report. So what does that mean for you as a consumer? As a consumer, that means you can't pull a copy of your credit report, neither can a creditor, without you, the consumer, unlocking your credit file.
Okay.
Okay, so try to educate people that if you are not actively out there shopping all the time and applying for new accounts constantly, freezing your credit file is phenomenal, right? So you freeze it, then no one can obtain your credit report without you as the consumer having a PIN that you go to a website and you unfreeze prior to, shopping.
Okay.
If you are super credit active and you want to open accounts all the time, you can still freeze your credit report. You just need to know that before you go shopping, you need to unfreeze it.
Okay.
Right? But that's a great method to protecting your credit file, provided you remember your PIN.
Okay. And with the credit freeze, is that something that there's a charge for? Is that free to certain people, or?
So there is a charge for the freeze and the unfreeze, and that varies by state. Okay. So when you go to the credit freeze website and you look at what state that you reside in, then you can see the charges, and it varies slightly by state.
Okay.
And with the freeze, you do need to freeze each file individually. Each credit reporting agency has their own site.
Okay. A question about for parents: when, if ever, should you pull a credit report on your child to see if they're a victim of identity theft? I'm particularly interested in the answer to this question because we got some junk mail for my 15-year-old a little while ago that was weird and indicated that her name had entered a database that I was not real happy for it to be in. So I went and checked her credit report, and she didn't have one. And I took that as a good sign. But is that sufficient to know that her credit hasn't been compromised?
Right. So you have to think about your kid in the same way, like a miniature version of an adult, right?
Right.
So if your child's name is out there on some mailing list, then you have a name and an address, and they're going to get probably bizarre mail. My daughter, I think when she was 12, her identity was used. So she got a credit card at the house. And I was like, whoa, wait a second. That shouldn't have happened. So we had to go through that process. The Equifax offers a child monitoring service, right? So you can input your child's social into this monitoring service, and we basically freeze the social to protect the child's credit report. A child shouldn't have a credit report yet, right, until they become credit active. So we protect the child's identity and monitor for any activity that could be surrounding that child. So that is, an ideal situation or for a child is to go ahead and make them part of a monitoring service so that you as the parent will know if anyone attempts to open or start credit in your child's name.
Okay.
But, as far as should you look now or when should you look, you should look, right, at any point. The results of no credit file is a good indication that there's not a credit file for the child.
Okay. Let's see, we have another one. If you're a victim of medical identity theft, I think this means instead of financial identity theft, is it still important to tell the credit companies and the credit bureau about that?
Yes, I would say it is. If someone has enough information about you to perpetrate medical fraud, it opens you to the opportunity that they could do financial fraud as well.
Okay.
And placing that fraud alert on your credit file protects you, the consumer, and will save you much time and frustration down the road.
Okay. I think that's all that we've got coming in from folks outside of us. I have a question about, you said early on that Equifax has a lot of data about us beyond our financial information. So I would love to know what y'all do within Equifax to protect that data, because obviously that's important to you. So what does that look like, and what advice would you give maybe to small business owners in particular about when they're starting to collect this data? What should they be looking at?
Right. So Equifax, we are, trusted stewards of data, and we're trusted because of the security and the policies and the controls we put around data, right? So anyone that comes to Equifax, first of all, comes to Equifax and says, hey, I'm small business, I'm a new company, and I want to buy data from Equifax so that I can service consumers, whether it's loans or cars or whatever. We do a very good due diligence on making sure who we're doing business with truly is a business and a true relationship that we want to be engaged in, right? And this is just beyond going, hey, fill out an application and we're good to go. It's great that they can pay a bill and fill out a financial or fill out an application, but we do a due diligence on who that company is and what people are involved in that company before we share information with that company. Likewise, if someone wants to give us data, or if we're looking at a company to engage in any type of business with, we're making sure there's a good, solid relationship and that there's a good reputation with the data and with who that company is. Small businesses, those are great opportunities with Equifax and how we can engage there. And, talking about small businesses, we have a great database of businesses and how they perform and who they are and their financial information. We protect our information. We have, best in class, security measures and how we protect our network and the way we evaluate data. We look at all of our people and who we hire and making sure that we're hiring reputable people with good backgrounds. Everything we do, we have a good due diligence around it to make sure that we know what we're engaging in, whether it's from business or people or processes.
Okay. Got another question. Does Equifax have a smartphone app?
Does Equifax have a smartphone app? So that we have an app today that centers around for your monitoring, right? So like I said, I utilize our Equifax monitoring tool. So I have an app on my phone and I can go in and I can set my alerts and I can monitor my credit file via a smartphone app.
Okay. Do you have any good stories about kind of interesting ways that you've seen fraud occur that were new, or funny is probably the wrong word, but
yeah.
Attention grabbing?
Attention grabbing. Goodness. Yes. So let's see. I think probably some of our more unusual stories around identity theft. I mean, we see all the time, just I lost my wallet, or this was taken, or that was taken. Those are kind of the normal ones. But I think probably one of our more interesting ones, it had to do with social media, and I'm trying to remember. what it was. Oh, I know what it was. I alluded to it earlier. People being really surprised when they go somewhere and their house is broken into.
Mm-hmm.
So this one started with, a couple that called and was, upset because both of them had been a victim of identity theft, the husband and the wife, and the teenage daughter, all of them, victim of identity theft, credit cards at same places. And they just had no idea why. They all had their wallets. They couldn't figure out why they were, why they were being targeted. And so talking to them and asking different questions, and happened to be talking to the daughter one afternoon. And she said, well, this all happened as soon as we were on vacation. So maybe we were targeted on vacation, and in conversation got to find out. And so I do what any good investigator does. I get on the internet and I start hitting Google, and I start poking around and looking on Google. Well, lo and behold, the family has, a social media account, and the family openly advertised about their vacation that was coming up, specifically where they were going, when they were leaving, and the daughter posted constantly where they were going. And I mean, she checked in everywhere they went. And mom and dad, they posted pictures, and it looks like they had a wonderful vacation. But unfortunately, during the time they were gone, someone broke into their house, took all of their, jewelry and electronics and things of that nature, and apparently picked up enough information, probably from a computer or a laptop in the house, about them, that they were able to immediately start opening credit cards and opening loans and cell phones and things of that nature. And the family just couldn't believe it. And so I remember my final conversation with the dad. I'm like, look, I'm kind of talking to him about it. And he was just surprised that I knew all this information. And I said, well, sir, it really wasn't that difficult. It's not like I did anything special. I just did a simple Google search, and lo and behold, here it is. And, I kind of talked about everything. And he's like, he really was surprised that information was that easy to find. So it goes back to that awareness, right? Just thinking about where you're putting your information.
Right. So the daughter in particular is jumping into my mind as a parent. How do we teach kids to navigate safely online while still getting that social interaction that they crave, that is so, vital to their lives?
Exactly. It's funny because that's a challenge in my house today. I have 2 college-age daughters, and they love to be on the internet, and they love that social interaction and chatting and posting pictures. And so it was the education piece with them to say, look, I'm sure you're a very friendly student, but I know that you don't know 5,000 people. So let's not advertise to 5,000 people where you're going on vacation. And just because someone sends you a private message doesn't mean they need your phone number, your address, and all your particulars, right? So it's educating them and getting them to listen. Doesn't mean they're going to always follow it, but it's really an education piece. It's getting them to think about those items, and that's typically the biggest challenge with our kids.
I think that's right. You've used the word education multiple times during this webcast, which suits me just fine, given that that's what I do for the center. So I will do a little plug here and just say that if anyone out there is looking for resources to guide them through the identity recovery process, or to help them protect themselves, or to figure out how to set their social media accounts so that they are locked down as much as they can be, we have information all over our website to cover all of those areas. So you can look there and read articles and download toolkits and watch webcasts to get at how to do those things well.
That's awesome. And they can play your game.
That's right. That's right. They can play Beat the Thief and start with really young kids, teaching them how to be safe online and how to understand that the information that we put out there is permanent.
That's right.
Okay, I don't think we have any other questions from the audience. So if you want to say any last bits before we wrap up, anything you want to add?
I certainly appreciate the opportunity to come out and speak.
We are very grateful to have you here today.
Thank you.
And thank you to everybody out there for joining us today. And we'll see you soon.